You are listening to Season 3 of Transition Tales, hosted by Christina Herr. Listen to stories from the military community that inspire you to visualize your future and feel empowered to move through your own transitions in life. Welcome to Transition Tales, a Live with Courage podcast. I'm your host, Christina Herr. Our guest today is Army veteran Michael Martinez. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks a lot, Christina.
So let's get started with you telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Michael Martinez. I did 9 years active duty and here and there snippets active duty with the National Guard. Been with the military for 18 years now.
Wow.
And I'm currently a database administrator over at Army North here in Fort Sam with a company called C-Focus Software Incorporated. Really good opportunity there. Great team there, and that's the story I want to share. How did I get from active duty to to getting a good job?
Getting a good job, which it sounds like it was quite the journey for you. So let's start at the beginning. Can we start at the beginning of that transition journey? All right, tell me about that.
Well, started. I did the transition thing. I really gamed the system, I guess you could say, because that's what they say when you go through that last year of this is what I'm going to do for active duty military, right? And I was constantly hounded like, hey, we need you to do this job. Hey, we need you to do that job. I'm like, well, I got appointments. They're like, oh man, so now you're just gonna, now you're done, huh? You're retired on active duty. I was like, man, I'm not getting a retirement. You're crazy. I'm going to out. And it was kind of funny. And one guy, he's like, so why are you really getting out there, man? And I was like, he's like, is it because of money? It's like, man, if it was because of money, I'd sell crack at the front gate. He's like, what do you mean by that? I was like, well, there's a lot better ways to make money while you're still in the military. I just wanted to take advantage of the opportunities that, because I felt like that it was time for me to go ahead and pursue my civilian career and my civilian goals. So, and there's a lot of being in the military has its perks, and being active duty has its perks, and being National Guard has its perks, and just going straight civilian has a lot of its perks as well. So you didn't seem like you were like a lifer then. You had actual civilian goals while you were serving, or did that kind of come later on in your career? No, I've always had civilian goals. When I first joined, I wanted to become an officer, but I had a lot of growing up to do, and I took way too many things too seriously. But I went enlisted and I became a medic first, and then but when I joined the military, I had my degree already, so that's why I went to OCS, and they made me a medic, and I was like, okay. So, and part of the reason why I became a medic was like, don't really want to drive trucks, don't want to pump gas. And I think I heard there's a lot of girls at Fort Sam. So, lo and behold, I got assigned to the only company that had about 90% of dudes. And I was like, man, this is one hell of a sausage fest, I'll tell you what. So, oh man,
not
I had
what
a
you were
there.
expecting.
Well, yeah, but it was the Army, so I was ready for disappointment. I was raised an Air Force brat and then joined the Army, so my dad always wonders. He's like, man, why did you join the Army? You knew better. As the years went by in National Guard, my health got the better of me, and I didn't know what was going on and dealing with that. But as far as long-term goals, when I didn't make it through OCS, I started working on a business plan and just different business plans. And I was always number crunching to kind of keep myself occupied, because, man, when you're in a holding company, man, that's tough.
Yes, it is.
It is absolutely tough, because the mentality, your mentality is that, nobody's there. The NCOs that are there, they're not there to help you grow. They're there to help you transition to wherever you're going to go to next. And one of the biggest business plans that I'd worked on was to I was trying to figure out how to make money with a cattle ranch. That's near impossible.
Is it?
Yeah, it's near impossible. It's the only way you can do that is if you start a conglomerate. You cannot just sell cows and expect to make money off of the products of beef or leather. You know, you have to do both, and also at the same time, you have to do other stuff to continue to make money, because the money, unless you are selling direct to a I would say, yeah, consumer. Unless you're selling direct to consumer, you're not going to make money. I grew up on a ranch. That's why I had a little bit of inspiration for that. And that was the biggest project that I worked on to try and keep myself occupied while I was waiting to go from OCS to AIT. So yeah, so when I got ready to transition in 2011, I started. I went to workshops, I went to TAPS and stuff like that. And there was one key bit of advice that I didn't listen to until much later in my transition, which took me to get here to back to Fort Sam Houston, interestingly enough. Well, I went back to IT. That was my last reenlistment. The recruiter came to me, or retention NCO came up to me in Iraq, and he's like, okay, Specialist Martinez, what can I do to get you to reenlist? I said, I want to go back to IT. He says, okay, I'll figure out how to get that for you. So like, all right. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, how the heck am I going to get out of this place without, all this craziness. So funny thing was that when I got back from my last deployment, active duty, I had, I talked to Kristen at length, about, where should we go? And she's like, well, I'd like to go to Florida with my family. And I say, well, I'd like to go to San Antonio with my family. And so we had two different goals, and we discussed it, and it was really difficult because we didn't really know where we're going to end up, and we didn't know what was going to be there for us when we got out. We had saved some money, and the doing the Diddy moves helped out with making sure that the finances weren't too crazy when I got to wherever we were going. And so we did it, Diddy move, and and we ended up going to Texas. And the goal was that we were gonna stay for a little bit of time in San Antonio, and somewhere with my sister. We're gonna stay for a month or so while we're looking for another place to stay here in San Antonio. And then what happened was pretty much the day of, my mom had gotten hurt, and she needed somebody to watch her. So she ended up staying at my sister's place, and so we didn't have anywhere to go. So we went to Seguin, and I was like, man, this is gonna really stink. And because the resources that are out in Seguin weren't necessarily the resources in San Antonio.
Right.
So interesting story. Another thing was that I had applied to the master's program in Texas State, and I also applied for the master's program over in UTSA for MBA. And I don't know why I decided to go to Texas State, because UTSA would have been a lot easier for me to travel to. Mm-hmm. Holy cow! But I guess lucky enough that I ended up at Texas State and Seguin. Because what ended up happening is I stayed with my brother there in Seguin, and then it got to the point where we couldn't find anywhere to go except for a rundown little place that didn't have any walls, no doors. The windows were questionable. Yeah, I don't think we had windows, and no kitchen sink, no bathtub, pretty much. It was crazy.
Wow, you really had to rough it.
Yeah, there was nothing out there, and it was crazy because, so what happened was, so when we had to decide, okay, hey, we need to make a decision where we're going to go, and we looked at how much money we had left over in our accounts and stuff like that, and I said to Kristen, I said, there's one place that we can go, but it's going to be really tough. We can make it happen, but it's going to be expensive. And but in the end, what will happen is we'll be able to at least we'll be able to afford it. And what it was is actually it was my family home at my grandparents' ranch, and it was what I grew up on. The thing was is that nobody had lived in the house for 20 years, and the walls fell off. The only thing that it was interesting because, oh man, I don't know how that I don't know how we rebuilt that thing, but we did. The kids were staying in a little we had a little apartment like office, and the kids were up there. I think Paul was, he must have been 10, and Sarah was 5, I guess, and 6. Yeah, she was about to go into kindergarten, so I think she started kindergarten. So that was one of our saving graces, was the fact that we could put the kids in school during the day,
right,
while we worked on the ranch. And we rebuilt the bathroom and the master suite basically. And for the first 2 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we lived out of the master suite. So we didn't have the kitchen sink, so we're doing our dishes and we were cooking in the bathroom. I'm really thankful because Kristen, she says that she doesn't think that she's the rock, but man, she's been my petra. I'll tell you what. Oh man, she has been. And if it wasn't for Kristen, I really don't think I would have been able to make it through that. I don't think I would have been able to finish my MBA. And I was really lucky because my family was also, they were like, look, we're not going to support you if you're not working on your MBA. That's the only thing you're allowed to do. I was like, goodness gracious, this is tough. So what was I living on? I was living on the GI Bill and student loans, and the Hazelwood Act. I ended up finding additional work up in San Marcos with a company up there, and I was pretty much just running around and repairing computers or making sure that networks were still up, and ended up pulling a few contracts for that company, and that was pretty cool.
And were you guard at this time as well?
Yes, I transitioned out of the active duty, was for what was called try one, and they said basically, okay, so you're going to try 1 year, and then you're going to you basically during that year you're going to decide whether or not you want to reenlist or extend. And that was something else. That was something I did not understand. Transitioning to the guard was, I never, my whole life, I was always dependent on the military, right? Up until that point, everything I did was, if I needed something, sergeant's going to provide it. One way or another, sergeant's going to provide it. Whether it's through my dad, because I was an Air Force dependent, or whether it was, because I was active duty, and, if I needed something, I had barracks, I had food at the DFAC, I had everything. So if there was ever any problems, I could always go back to the military and be like, hey, this, and one of the biggest things that I didn't understand was how to seek healthcare for myself. I had no clue. And even though I had TRICARE Reserve Select, I had no idea how to go see the doctor. I think that's absolutely crazy. I had no idea how to pick up the phone and say, hey, doctor, I need to make an appointment, because my whole life was go to sick call.
Right.
or it was just, you went to the care, Air Force, we went to the family care clinic, and you say, hey, I need to see a doctor, and like, okay, unless you had a broken bone, they always scheduled you for an appointment. I didn't know what the idea was of having the same doctor. Holy cow. It was the first time. I was like, hey, hi doctor, I'm here. And it was funny because I would go, the only thing I understood was I went to urgent care, because they're like, okay, so TRICARE will pay for urgent care. Good enough. So I went to urgent care whenever I had a problem, like if I had the sniffles or if my foot was hurting. And even though I had VA disability, all the VA hospitals were over here in San Antonio. So this is what happened. My knees started swelling up about 4 years ago. My knees started swelling up, and maybe about 5 years ago. And what happened was a doctor here, and when I got to Texas, he pulled it out, he pulled out he drained my knee, and he said, okay, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what I already know what's wrong with you. And I'm like, okay. And I'm telling this is 2019.
Okay.
So I joined in 2002. My feet started swelling in 2003. And in 2019, he said, you have gout. I said, man, how's that, man? My blood tests keep on coming back normal. He's like, I'm not even going to argue with you. He's like, look, I'm only going to say it one more time. I don't want to argue with you about it. You have gout. You need to get it treated. I was like, okay, let's get it treated. What do I got to do? Go talk to your primary care. I was like, oh. No, I figured out how to get to primary care by then.
But it's so sad.
Oh man!
Look at what we have to go through to get treatment, and it's not just service members. I know this happens in the civilian world too, but it's so frustrating.
Yeah, it was.
On top of all the other transition stuff you were going through. So hold on, let's go back to your time in San Antonio after you guys started working on the house and trying to get settled here.
So it took us about a year to expand out through the entire trailer. During spring, the crazy thing is that winter of 2011, 2012 was really friggin' cold. I mean, it just didn't stop being cold. It's like, man, if there was ever a time, and we had and I found the old kerosene heaters that we had out in the, I guess you could say the barn. We called it the Bat Cave. It's a pretty cool place because it's huge. But we had some kerosene heaters, and we cleaned them up, and got it all cleaned up and put the kerosene in there, and so I was able to keep the kids warm. And that spring was really wet too. Holy cow! I'm like, man, not only I'm gonna freeze you out, I'm gonna see whether or not you really want this MBA. That's what I was getting. I was like, come on, man, holy cow! And the water got to we lived in a mobile home, so we rebuilt a mobile home. That made it a heck of a lot easier, by the way, than a foundation house, I'll tell you what. But the water got to the floor.
Oh no!
And the house is a good. On one end, it's about 2 feet off the ground, and on the other end, it's about 4 feet off the ground. So it was, and now, man,
that's a lot of water.
And oh yeah, it was a lot of water. And you would look, and you would think that you were living in a lake. I mean, that's how much water there was. I didn't miss any classes or anything like that. So I just, but interestingly enough, what did happen is, here's one that really tested me. So I got scars on my head and kind of across my face here, and they're kind of hard to see right here, but I got some scars on my eye. And what happened was, one night when we were rebuilding the house, I took a nap in the lights and stuff like that. And you know how all the bugs get around you, right? Whenever,
right.
When you have the lights on. So what happened was, there was this beetle, and this beetle is called is a blister bug. They call it a blister bug. And this little booger migrated up from Mexico, and what this thing is known for is it likes to forage in an alfalfa. And so what happened was, one landed on me, and I was taking a nap, right? So I was just chilling out, taking a nap, but one landed on me, and I started rubbing it. I'm trying to get it off of me. And then it just didn't get off, and I kept on going, and I ended up rubbing that thing all the way up to the top of my head, across my eye, and over here to my ear. And I got a picture of it, and my face just looks like something out of the Black Plague on one side of my face.
Oh.
And so, man, so my eye was like this, and I had all these scabs and stuff like that. I went to the ER like twice. They were pumping me full of antihistamines and steroids and stuff like that. And I'm like, and I drive, and one of my instructors, he's like, I need to see you to excuse you from class. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, I need a doctor's note. I'm sorry. I was like, okay. So I went up there and eyes shut, and I'm like this and looking, and I drove from Seguin with one eye to San Marcos.
That's safe.
Tell this instructor that I got this blister bug situation going on my face. And he's like, he looks at me and he says, well, you drove up here. I don't see why you can't come to class. I was like, dude, I can't even concentrate. I'm barely even here, man. Say, well, the doctors note that there's no restriction. I was like, are you serious? I got a doctor's note, and what it was, the reason why I got the doctor's note to say no restrictions was so, I mean, I was military minded. I had things to do.
Right.
I didn't need anybody to tell me not to do anything. So I got no restrictions. What happened was I ended up failing that class. And interestingly enough, the other class that I was working on, he gave me an incomplete. And I got an incomplete for that class, and I ended up finishing that class and taking a test. And I have no clue how I passed that test, but he was a great guy.
I think this shows that sometimes military transition has like these awful, weird things that happen. Like,
this is not a
story. Yeah, this is not a story that you would hear at a workshop. You know, my education was halted by a blister beetle.
Yeah, it was terrible. I literally had scabs all down my face, and the thing is that I was still trying to find still trying to find work at that time.
That too. Like, how do you go to an interview with your face all messed up? Oh my goodness.
But so I was working, and I was just trying to figure out something and putting in applications and stuff like that. And I think the reason why I told the doctor that I didn't want restrictions was because I needed to drive. That's what I told him. I have to drive, man. I can't be on restrictions. So I didn't want anybody. I didn't, here I am. No, fresh out of military, you got a restriction. You got to abide by it, or it's breaking the law.
Right.
I'm like, oh my goodness. Now I know better.
Well, not only that, you probably didn't
the restrictions.
Right. You probably didn't want to feel like a burden to your wife either, having to drive you around.
No.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
That's understandable.
I mean, that time, no, especially. But so fast forward, just a lot of roughing it and
job. Yeah. So you're trying to
build a house and find a job and run.
Go to school.
Yeah.
You're in the Guard.
And for some reason, I decided to try and start a business.
Oh, and then did you not have enough stress? Like, were you?
I guess not. What it was is I was talking to people all around town, and I would hear them, and they would be like, they would always complain, no, I don't know how to use my computer. I got this hunk of metal, and it cost me $2,000. I'm like, well, shoot. I mean, all this stuff you're doing by hand, I can throw it in the computer and you're good. And they're like, well, that would be great if you could show us how to do that. And I was like, well, unfortunately, I'm looking for a job, and that's not you can't afford me. I'm sorry. let's shoot ourselves in the foot here.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Anyhow, so I was like, I'd love to, but I got to find a job first. And they're like, okay. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a business. And that's another story. But it ended up that I didn't know how to run a business, didn't know how to go out and get business. I kept on shooting myself in the foot, I guess, and didn't really have a good, I didn't have that finesse that you needed to make sure that you were running a business properly. Like everything from, I had an elevator pitch, but it wasn't working. I had a capability statement, but it wasn't working. I had a website and all this other stuff, and there was, but basically what it came down to was that I just couldn't focus. I think that's what ended up happening is I couldn't focus long enough to get things done. This is what happened. So in January of 2015, my NCO comes up to me and says, Specialist Martinez, I got a deployment for you. I was like, oh yeah? It's like, yeah. So I want you to go on it. I was like, So I thought about it, I was like, oh, shoot, man, I'm just about out of money. And I was like, okay, so here's the situation, boss. I got to finish my MBA. I'm one semester away from finishing. And this summer I plan on taking the last class. He's like, all right, so you need to figure it out. So like, okay, I'll figure it out. You know, that whole make it happen, Sergeant. So I went home that night from drill, and I said, hey, Kristen, there's a deployment opportunity coming up, and I can take it, and we can probably get rid of a lot of these problems. And she says, all right, so this is what's going to happen. She told me, she's like, I'm on board. We're gone. She's like, I'm tired of living out here on the ranch, that, you know, a house that we put together, and it was just full of stress because one thing after another, me getting sick out there, animals die, dealing with that. Just one thing after another, family issues and so on and so forth. And so she's like, so I'm going to Florida. It's like, okay, I'll see you when you get back, or when I get back, I guess. And so we packed up the house, and we did our own. Now you don't get Diddy move when you're a civilian.
No.
So we packed up the house. I did all of my paperwork, and the Texas National Guard told me that I couldn't IST until I got back from deployment. So I was like, okay. And here is the craziest thing right here. Number one thing, I was number one on the promotion list in 2015.
Wow.
Number one. What happened was and I was even in promotable slots. So that was really crazy. I don't know. So let me tell you, I took my family to Florida, came back, and I attached to the deploying unit. And so the promotion rounds came out, right? They said, okay, so we're going to start promoting folks in the Texas Army National Guard. And I came up and I was like, hey, look, I'm number one on the list. You know, can I get a job? Can I, you know, promote me? You know, make me a sergeant. Like, no, you're leaving. It's like, oh man. I was like, what? Hold on a second. And they're like, and on top of that, you're not slotted. I was like, but I was slotted. And they're like, oh, well, see, the thing is that you're not slotted anymore because you're on a deployment. I'm like, how does that work? And they're man. Oh, so this is another thing. They don't, in the National Guard, they don't really teach you a lot of this stuff. This
Right.
stuff you figure it out on your own. You got to go, and you don't get you know, Sergeant so-and-so saying, you know, after 18 months, you're automatically promoted to you know, all that stuff that they tell you. 24 months, you get automatic promotion to specialist. And with a waiver, you get 12 months. And with, you know, all that stuff that they tell you, right? It's like,
Right.
man, it's out of like the back of their hand. They know the promotion schedule. But in the National Guard, they're like, hey, thanks for showing up. We appreciate it. And since you attended, we'll go ahead and make sure you get paid. That's about it. They don't check to see if you got TRICARE. I mean, that was my experience at first. It was like, oh, well, you know, everybody has that, right? I mean, you know, no, there was just a lot of gaps between being a active duty NCO and being a National Guard NCO. So, I mean, I missed out on a lot of stuff, and I didn't really understand a lot of stuff. So I didn't get my promotion, and I IST'd, which is interstate transfer to Florida. And when I got there, I got on the promotion list, and I was promoted as soon as I got there, and that was a great time. I learned a lot more about my craft there. But the problem was that we ended up in a small town, and I still didn't know how to find a job. Now, let me back up a little bit. In 2015, when we deployed, so what happened is I finished my classes for that semester, right? And I went and talked to my counselor about it. I was like, hey, I'm about to deploy and I got one more class to take. What can I do? And they're like, well, you have to take it resident. It's like, I mean, come on, help me out here. I'm about to deploy. This was really rough. I did a lot to get here. And they're like, they said, well, let's see what we can do. And they helped me out. Texas State helped me out with that, and they said they got me into the last class with the professor, and they said, okay, you, as long as you attend this many classes, we'll go ahead and we'll see what else we can do from there. Just make sure that you're still supporting your group, or because what it was is the last class is the capstone. What do they call it when? Yeah, the capstone class. So what it was is we ended up with the project of trying to develop a plan to expand the convention center, I think it was, out in San Marcos. And that was real stuff. We learned a lot about the Main Street program, which is really huge in the South, and it's really huge for small towns. And I'd love to talk to you more about it, but in a nutshell, it's a program to help small towns retain their spirit, if you would.
Oh, cool.
And help the companies and the organizations and everybody just pretty much help each other and become a great thriving town like what they were founded upon.
Right.
And just maintain that culture that they have. So it's a great program for small towns. I think it's absolutely amazing. And so there I was. I skipped over a few things there. A couple of things that people were doing to me. I say doing to me. They made me a director of one of the chambers over there, and they made me a president of one of the business organizations over there in Seguin. And then I was also so I ended up breathing through a fire hose on how to become a VFW commander after that. And they were like, congratulations, here's a gavel, get to work. I'm like, okay, and now you need to plan this, and this, and I need to make sure that this happens, and here's all the. I'm like, huh? They're like, no, don't worry about it, we got you. But you need to make sure that you're at this meeting.
Yeah, you had a lot of irons in the fire while you're actually trying to survive military transition.
Yeah.